Okay, hello and good evening. Happy Friday, happy holidays. I hope you're all doing well. Cool. So today I'm going to play with some Christmas presents. I want to try out some new brushes, which I have here. Some new artifact brushes that I got for Christmas, as well as some new canvases. So today I'm working on a nice 10 by 20 canvas, which I've already pre-treated with about 5 layers of gesso. So it's really nice and smooth and happy. What I want to do is take some of the um, earlier studies that we did of Monet and actually apply them. So I have some inspiration on both sides here. Monet's original work, as well as some cool paintings, as well as a cool painting that I found on Pinterest. I basically used those two things, kind of thought about my previous color studies, and then sketched out what I wanted roughly here. So essentially, what I want to do is capture the viewer's eye beginning in the lower left hand corner, draw them into the middle here, and kind of let them get stuck in a bright spot in this area. To do all of this, and kind of like using the clouds to also frame that same point right about here. So that puts our horizon very high in the painting, right about the 1/3 mark, which I've marked here. Because the canvas is 10 inches, to do this, all I did was measure my 3-inch brush and say, hey, look at that, 3 inches. That's where the horizon line is, and I did that on both sides. And I've used this tape here just to mark where I want to have the horizon be. So, first things first, the plan for today, which I may not get much further past, is to apply a colored ground. To do that, what I'm going to be doing is using some burnt sienna, and the burnt sienna will be our orange to hold that colored ground. What I'm going to do is pour out a nice big line of it, kind of near the 1/3 mark of my palette. And what I'm going to do is take my 3-inch brush. I'm going to dab it in some water. Both my bowls are clean right now, but I do have a clean bowl as well as a dirty bowl available for cleaning. And now that I have some moisture on the brush, I'm going to basically just pull at the paint and load it on the brush a bit. Just pulling at it and pulling it away from from how it came out of the tube. Now I'm just going to kind of start on the bottom, I think, and make some just kind of putting lapping paint on. It's okay that I am not really thinking about anything right now. I'm just putting paint on the canvas and I'm spreading it out to the best of my ability. Each time I go back in, I am cleaning my brush off. As I do so, I'm making quite the mess and splashing quite a bit because the brush barely fits in the bowl that I'm using to clean it. So it is fairly wet still, so I'm going to again keep pulling at the paint, pulling it out, and then back onto the canvas. And again, I'm just trying to fill up the canvas here. I'm not trying to make any shapes or forms. I'm just trying to make sure that I am applying this in a very wet way. I think it's actually going on quite thick, so I'm probably going to want to have the brush be a little wetter as I pull at it. Yeah, there, I can feel that moving a lot better than it was a minute ago. I can see I've already lost some hairs here, so I'm just gonna use my finger to get that out. Finger painting is always fun. One more here. I'm gonna get rid of those finger painting marks. Another one. Interesting. Not sure if it's picking up hairs from this brush or if it's from the brush that I used to apply the gesso. Also my first time using a larger brush. Cool. So back in, then into the clean bowl. It does not fit in the clean bowl, or barely does. Drying it out on my paper towel. And then pulling at the paint some more, both sides of the brush. Trying to load it up a lot better. And then back in. And again, I'm really just trying to let these layers build up, get some paint on the canvas, and make myself feel a little better about not having a big white field to look at. Sorry if you guys are getting a nice good view of my bald spot today. Another hair. Back in the dirty water bowl to clean the brush. Back on the paper towel, cleaning it off. Back into the orange. Burnt sienna, really. Back into the burnt sienna. And then just filling in the bottom corner here. Cool. Now, what I'm probably seeing there are spots where the gesso didn't absorb as much, or where it's not applied as evenly. So what I'm going to do is take a paper towel that's moist, I'm going to wring it out over the dirty water, and I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to wipe at it. I'm okay with what I'm doing right now because all I'm doing is kind of washing it. What I'm trying to do is just remove that heavy dark spot from the middle. Now my canvas should still be wet, so I can come back in with my burnt sienna and go right back to it. Okay. Now, all I'm going to keep doing is keep applying this burnt sienna and letting this build up, and continuing to make sure that my brush is only a little wet as it's picking up paint. I'm going to keep focusing on starting at the bottom here. Rinsing it off again. Back into the burnt sienna. can probably see how wet the brush is right now. And that's what I want to avoid, because as the brush gets wetter, it'll begin to remove paint. I want to be using water as a medium right now, not as a solvent. A medium will thin paint, a solid will remove it. Okay. Again, back into the burnt sienna. And now I'm trying to keep myself below the horizon line, or maybe that is the horizon line. And I'm just pulling down to unify the direction of the brush strokes a little bit. And pulling it across. Cool. Now, the next thing that I want to do, and I have put this guy here to let me know where I want the haystacks to terminate. And again, I want the eye caught in this part of the painting here. Not so much here, it's too close to the center. More right about there. And I want your eye to kind of be bouncing back and forth between those 2 points. Cool, my paper towels are saturated, so I'm going to grab some more and discard these. And I think we are done with number with the 3-inch brush. Getting paper towels out of the way. As I get some fresh ones. Paper towels are always your friend. I always recommend having as much of them on hand as possible. So I have a nice big roll of Bounty next to me. In fact, this time I'm going to learn my lesson. I'm only going to put half of them down, keep half of them at hand's reach. So now, my next step here is going to be to take a slightly smaller brush. Get some more burnt sienna out of the tube as well. I think I kind of ran through it very rapidly there. That's okay, we covered the canvas well. Cool. And what I want to begin doing is taking maybe the 1-inch brush and thinking about where I want to have the haystacks live. Actually, I'll start smaller than that. I'll start with a flat brush. And what I'm going to do is basically kind of work my way, pick a point right about here, have my first haystack there, and work them down in this direction. So in all reality, I think what I'll do next is dab my little guy in the 1-inch. And what I'm going to do is just make a decision. And all I'm going to do is just paint in the shape of the hay bale that I want. I'm going to come a little bit forward. Do the same. A little bit forward. And I'm doing the same. to clean off my brush. Grab more paint and repeat. And basically what I'm trying to really do is just sketch out where I want these shapes and forms to be. It's okay if I am adding or removing paint. I just kind of want there to be some kind of form to this. Back into my burnt sienna with my little flat brush is number 10 flat brush, and trying to be mindful of where I want this one. I think I want it to be right about here. And I may have miscalculated some. By not having this be on the edge. I think how I'll do that instead is pull into this. Again, this is why we paint from experience and use every painting session as an at-bat, because now I just come in here, change up my plan a little bit, and now we have one that's kind of very close to us in the near ground, right up next to the painting here. And the idea here is that your eye is going to be naturally drawn by these little tops into this general area of the painting. And as we put the sky in here in a little bit, once this first layer is dry, there'll be a nice big bright spot here. But I'm going to kind of hang out for a minute. I'm going to talk, and I'm going to let everything dry out. Clean my brush while I do so. Maybe I will also dampen it again. Take some more paint, again, just burnt sienna. And make this part here a bit darker. Just making it a little bit darker. Cool. Now, cool. That is basically dry. So what I'm going to do next is take some ultramarine blue, because it was on top. I'm going to pour that out relatively close to my burnt sienna. right near that, I'm going to pour out some titanium white. And now I'm going to basically mix these three colors until I have a kind of warmish orangey blue sky color. And I'm going to do this by wetting my 1-inch brush and pulling the blue into the orange first. Letting that mix a little bit. And what I'm seeing really is a bit of a darker brown. Washing my brush off. Painting my paper towels a little bit here. Back into the water. Drying it again. And now I'm going to pull in titanium white. Cool. And now I'm going to come into our sky area. Yeah, I love that. That's a great color for this. And just pull this up. Just pulling the sky up. Trying to start near the bottom. And just pulling it upward. And again, just pulling it upward. Thank you guys for joining. For those of you who are watching, feel free to add a comment or chat, or if you have any advice or tips, feel free to give them. But I'm just going to keep on adding in this mixture of ultramarine blue, titanium white, and burnt sienna to make our sky. Going to clean off my brush. And go right back into the color that I mixed. Maybe adding in a touch more blue. And because I have a touch more blue, I'm going to start here instead. I know this probably looks a bit messy for now, but that's okay. With acrylics, we're going to keep layering in the same areas. And as these layers dry, they'll make more sense and begin to have more harmony. Okay. A little more burnt sienna, titanium white, and blue. Okay. Cleaning off my brush. back in to my paper towel, dabbing it in the clean water, back into our mixed color. Oop, that's probably too wet. So instead of going back in, I'm going to immediately stop and clean my brush. So I'm recognizing that there's too much water on there, and if I apply more paint, all I'm going to end up doing is washing away instead of adding. So I'm basically going to fix this, what I'm basically going to do is smush in a lot more paint into that wet spot and remix the colors that I'm working with. And what I'm trying to go for here is a color that I can easily have function as either the sky blue or as cloud, depending on how much white or gray I want in the color. Mixing up on my palette still. And right now it has a very creamy consistency, which is really very good because it means it's really going to flow. Now I have a lot of paint on the brush, and I'm going to begin right here and just work this in. It is going to flow a lot more because of all the water that I added by accident. And sometimes accidents are good things, and sometimes an accident lets you grow. That's an example of it. Because there, I mixed in a lot of water by accident, and that allowed me to pick up a lot more paint, and for that paint to be spread a lot more evenly than it otherwise would have. Pulling the excess paint up, and now I'm trying to just pull it out and blend it over what we already had here. Again, trying to pull this extra paint from left to right and really pull it across into this area. And what I'm kind of seeing here is an evening sky. Trying to just work the paint over a bit, smooth it out, let it be happy. And let it be alive a little bit. I'm just kind of pulling it down. Not really worried about getting paint on the rest of the canvas. It's going to get painted over anyway. And there. Now, that is a bit smoother. I'm going to wash my brush off. And what I'm actually doing as well is actually running it through paper towel, and then I rinse it again because that's so much paint on it that needs to be a little bit more cleaned up. Okay, again, drying it off as best I can on the paper towel. And what I'm going to do is go into titanium white, pull it out a lot, dunk that in the water, and then really pull more paint into that wet spot. And now I'm going to try to follow along the bottom here. And again, pull up. And what I'm trying to just do is give the subtle indication of some clouds. Again, just kind of wistfully moving these around, trying to always move in an upward direction. I'm also trying to lighten the color of that I have on canvas here a little bit, while also adding some texture. Cool, very good. Rinsing off my brush. Back onto the paper towel, which may have also run its course. I didn't realize how much water a 3-inch brush and a 1-inch brush would hold. Back into the titanium white. Again, kind of just pulling this up. While I still paint on the brush, I want to also hit up this corner a little more. I don't want it to feel forgotten. Washing the brush again. Dabbing in the clean water, pulling out more white into that wet spot. Getting a little blue on there as well. And right here. And again, just trying to kind of blend these colors together a bit without taking paint off the canvas. Cleaning my brush off again. And what I'm really trying to do is create a more complex sky than just having an even one tone for the sky. I'm really trying to let my brush make choices for me. Back into that color we just created. And right here again. Let's go back into our gray color a little bit. Let's start that right here. You can probably see how it's beginning to kind of pull up a little bit here as I'm moving across. As I'm getting over here, the paint's already beginning to dry, and it's becoming a little bit tacky, which is why this is kind of gliding on top of it. As I do this, it's very important that I apply very little pressure and kind of let the newer paint sit on top of the previous coat. What I really don't want to do is accidentally pull paint off. Cool. I'm going to count to 30 while I wash my water brush. And I'm going to clean that off a little bit. Well, let's see if this is still wet. Yeah, you are still a little wet. So what I'm doing is pulling acid at some titanium wet from my last session. I'm smearing it out a little bit, and what I'm going to do is work it in right here. I'm trying to do this in a downward motion, which is the opposite of the motion that I used for my sky. Cool. Rinsing off my brush. Back into more white. And this time we're going to start right about here. Again, I'm just trying to pull these upward. And kind of that circular motion. I'm seeing our hair on the canvas. I'm trying to get rid of it. There it is. Cleaning off my brush. Back in titanium white. Start over here this time, and again, I'm trying to pull these up. In very short motions. Back into titanium white. I'm just trying to spread the paint unevenly on this area, because what I kind of see forming here is a bright spot, which I want. Kind of right in here is looking a bit brighter than the rest of the canvas. Squeezing the brush out on the side of my bowl a little bit to get more of some of the excess paint. Back into titanium white. And layering more white into our bright spot. And again, same philosophy. I may also let this dry for a couple seconds before I proceed and let this take hold. As I do that, if any of you have any chats or comments, feel free to drop them in there as I'm just drying my brush. Cool. I'm going to come back into our mixture of titanium white and blue. I'm going to start right about here. Just kind of continue to work. What I'm also beginning to see is a lot of excess paint. I'm just trying to smooth that out some. The culprit. right back over, and it's like it never happened. Again, just trying to get rid of some of the excess paint, letting it dance a little bit before I go in and start to think about blending in and adding layers on top. Okay, what I'm doing here is I'm also really trying to allow time for the paint to dry. In the meantime, I'm trying to think about other areas of the painting that I can work on in the meantime. Or at least begin to layer in some different values, different colors in. I think what I'm going to do is take a mixture of raw umber and titanium white that I have ready, and I'm just going to begin to stamp in the tree line. Nice and loosely. At some point I will add color to this part, but right now all I want to do is generally block in the shapes. And as I do that, all I'm doing is drying my brush off and cleaning my brush on the canvas itself. Into that same color, switching my hand and just kind of just like this. Just pressing the brush into the canvas. Just kind of seeing what kind of marks I can make as well. And it's really okay if this is not perfect. This is just a guideline for where the rest of the painting will be. Being mindful where my tape is as well for my horizon line. And just kind of letting some shapes get blocked in. Washing off my brush, dabbing it dry on the side of the bowl as well. Back into my already quite saturated paper towel. Into a slightly darker value of raw umber. And working a little bit lower in the scene. Letting myself be a little violent as I'm hitting the canvas. And then again, just brushing it off on the actual canvas itself. Back into that same value of raw umber. And we're going to come right into here. Remember, this is also very far in the distance, so it's okay if these shapes aren't perfect. What's interesting here is, as you're looking at this color that we know is brown, I just painted it as such, it actually looks green, especially on camera. I'm looking at it on the screen as well as on the canvas, and it absolutely looks green on camera to me. Rinsing off my brush, and also drying it in the bowl a little bit, squeezing some of the water out of it. Back on the paper towel, back and forth a bit. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing on the far side of the painting here. So again, I'm going to start right about here. And really just kind of let these tones get mixed in a bit as I pull the brush down. I do want this side to feel a little bit closer than this side. So to do that, I'm going to be adding in some darker values on top of this. This will probably only get 3 layers. This is probably going to look closer to 5. So I'm probably going to work back over this quite a bit. Again, just kind of trying to pull this paint down, getting as much of it off the brush as I can, and then pulling it across as I hit the horizon. Cool. By now, most of what we have in our sky should be much more dry. Because of that, I now feel comfortable going back into that part of the painting and applying some more paint. So I touch this. Nope, it's still a little bit tacky, but should be dry enough. Well, you know what I'll do? I will be patient and smart, and I'll work a little bit lower in the painting for another maybe round or two. Taking a slightly darker shade of umber and going right back in here, just continuing to add depth. Again, cleaning the brush again, drying it out. Back into this third shade of umber. And just kind of going to work it in over here as well. All the way across. Again, just kind of lightly stamping down and making sure that I'm applying gentle pressure, especially as I come near the sky, and kind of pulling it back down to fix some of that paint removal I just did. Which is also allowing it to blend with some of that blue that's still a little bit wet. My right hand is much better being gentle than my left hand. Cool. Basically what I'm trying to do is really pull the paint down a little bit and let it mix in with the colors below. And then I'm going to use that to create the appearance of depth. Yeah, just really using the canvas to clean my brush somewhat as well. Now, and what I'm going to do next is work back into the sky. And I'm going to take more of titanium white, pure, and load it in right here, pulling it upwards. I'm okay if I paint over some of these trees, simply because of the fact that we're going to be layering on more paint there in a minute anyway. Clean my brush off again. More white. Very quick and very crisscrossy kind of motions. Cleaning off the brush some more. And now back into our mixture of white and blue. Cool. And I'm going to have to leave the sky be again for a little while because again it needs to really dry and set before I put on any more layers of color. I think what I'm going to do in the meantime is mark where I want the horizon to be formally. So I am drying off my 1-inch brush. And I'm going to put that aside and take a round brush, which I'm dipping in clean water. And I'm pulling this through raw umber. And I'm just going to come here and begin to work in where I suspect my horizon line will be. Rinsing it off again. Back into the raw umber. And again, just kind of working this across wherever I feel like the horizon should be. It's okay if it's not perfectly flat. We're not at sea. This is a fieldscape, so it should be relatively flat, but it's not the ocean. It's not going to be perfect. And your eye would not expect it to be perfect either. Cool. Drying that off a little bit. Back into the raw umber. It's going to be quite wet. And just letting the horizon take shape. Letting it drift a little bit further back in there to give the impression that goes off into the distance. And maybe whatever guy owns the field uses that to get through. Uses that to get through to the before he has to plow anything. And I'm just trying to spread this paint out in a way that's interesting. Cool. Now that I've established that with the 1-inch brush, I'm probably going to go back to the 1-inch just because I need to paint a larger area. Still quite wet, so that's good. Back into the umber. And just going to pull this across. Cleaning the brush. Loading up with a lot of paint. Right back in. Sorry for shaking the camera a bit there. And again, just trying to let there be a little bit of an unevenness of color here. Just letting this kind of fill the canvas. And I'm trying to also apply it a bit thinner to let the orange shine through. Right back into our raw umber. Trying to also start and stop in different points so that it's not always the same part that's having the darker spot or the lighter spot. And again, this really is only the first layer of this painting. You're probably going to be seeing this one quite a bit. But really for right now, all I want to do is block in basic color and paint onto the canvas. Not thinking about light, not thinking about shapes or forms or anything. I am just putting paint on the canvas. Cool. What's kind of nice is I'm actually seeing this line that I want already appearing. So what I'm going to do, I think, is try to focus on adding more paint on this side versus this side. So I'm going to try to add and be mindful of where I am versus this side of the canvas. In fact, let's go nuts. Cool. Now, where's the next one? The next one I think is right about here. Sometimes a painting won't make sense or it won't become together the way you want it to be. And in those moments, I always find it best to just make an extremely bold choice and just go for it. The more that I go for it, the more that I send it, the better I feel like the work becomes over time. Especially when I'm dealing with the early layers of a painting like I am right now. For those of you that have been watching my videos and shorts, I have been very focused on small paintings for a little bit, and that has, I think, caused me to forget or never really learn how to really layer paint onto a canvas like this. And now that I actually have these shapes on the canvas, I'm going this way. It's actually easier for me to make sure the perspective matches a little bit because now I have my eye as a target to reach toward. As I get more off into distance, I'm going to switch from my 1-inch brush back to my flat brush to let myself fit into the smaller area. And again, just trying to generally have these take up the right shape so that I have dark forms where we need them to be and light forms where we need them to be. And what I'm doing now, because I have a little extra paint on the brush, is just filling in and letting this kind of line take shape. And now I think it is time to switch back to the flat brush. And I want to try to fit in maybe 2 or 3 more of these. I'm also changing my paper towel because I'm soaked through. Into my flat or filbert, flat or filbert, flat or filbert. Which is which? Oh, they're both kind of filberts. Huh. Well, we're taking the more flatter of the two. Into the clean water. Matting dry. Taking up some of our raw umber. And let's also straighten you out a little bit. Not quite enough paint there. Clean it off. I may have to get out more. I may have to get out more raw umber. Again, perfection is not required here. This is just for something to tack paint onto later on. It's really just, we are really still very much in the blocking phase. That one's probably a little bit too big, so I'm going to change direction of my brush a little bit here to kind of overwrite it a little bit. These are going to get harder and harder as I move further back. Okay. Dum-ba-dum. Romber. Clean my brush a little bit. Back into the romber. Again, just trying to, it's too wet. Cool, so I'm gonna leave that be. I will paint those in probably when the canvas is more full. Now, I'm really drawing off the brush this time, because I'm now going to take my flat and go back into our bluish gray mixture. And I'm going to work right in here. And I'm just trying to add paint on now. Trying to get a little more paint on this part of the canvas. Be the transition out of the first layer into the second layer. I can still feel myself removing paint, so I'm probably going to have to pause here. I think what I'll do in the meantime is, so because we're going to have light probably coming from this area here, the tops of these will all be in light. And I think what I want is to have this side of the painting be dark and this side be light. To do that, I think what I'm going to do is add on more romber, clean brush, nice and wet, pulling the romber away from the other colors until I have a nice kind of creamy, until I have a kind of nice cream mixture on the palette. And now I'm going to start from here and brush inward. And work this up higher and higher into the canvas. And then again lower. Now I think what I'm going to do next, well, no, I can't do that next because it's not dry yet. I was about to make a bold choice. I was about to stamp in light, as I said, I just kind of said I was. And I've decided to not do that yet because it's not dry yet. I really need to let that dry before I attack it again and before I begin to apply more paint. I think, therefore I am, which actually is not a bad, If you think you're an artist, if you believe you're an artist, you can be an artist. That's one of the more beautiful things about art as a whole. Just working this same color along the top of the tree, along the tops of our tree line here. Okay, it's okay if I write over little parts here and there. They're going to get repainted at the end anyway. But that, I feel like, is a very cool effect. And that's giving a lot more depth to that tree line than was there a moment ago. You're just kind of starting at the top, pressing nice and gently and lightly, and working my way loosely across. By going up higher into the sky or into a region that's more reserved for the sky, what I'm doing is also creating areas that are lighter, and I'm further pushing this back. I'm sorry, I elbowed the camera again. And my left arm is not nearly as good at being gentle and soft as my right is, but that's okay. Now I'm going to rinse my brush off. Back into my paint, mixing into the wetter area, and just dabbing in some shapes. Trying to give the indication that there's some depth to this tree line. That's not this perfect, way too much paint. That's not this perfect homogeneous thing. Softening it a little bit, making it not so linear in appearance. Cool, very good. I still have a lot of paint on the brush, so I'm gonna come right there. Waste not, want not. Now, cool, this is dry. So I'm going to do is take our darker cloud color gray on the 1-inch brush. And I'm really kind of pulling into a point, like so. And I'm just going to begin to try to fluff in some different shapes here. Yeah, it's not quite going as planned. It's definitely creating some interesting shapes and some interesting blending. I don't know if necessarily the blending in shapes that I wanted to have. What I'm going to begin to, I think what I'm going to do is just go back the opposite direction here and lighten it some. Cleaning off the brush. Into a lighter blue. And right in. And I'm really still seeing that bright spot there. So I really think what I have to do is allow it to dry overnight and let that sit and then come back in with probably some new colors as well. Because probably going to need um, some yellow, maybe even some red coming over that tree line. But I think for now, what I want to do is just fill in the sky with a second coat. Yeah, it needs to dry. So I know I just saw you join. However, I think I'm going to call my stream here and let this dry overnight before I begin to attack it more. Because there really is a lot of paint up here and a hair. Um, and I really want this to dry before I begin to add more paint onto it. Because I really want this balder area here and here to have a much brighter focus. And again, I really want that brighter area to be seeming to shine onto the rest of the painting. So essentially filling this side with light, which is why it's a bit gloomier on this side than it'll be on this. So we're gonna have light working from left to right, but that will be tomorrow. For those of you that are new, please feel free to subscribe. I will likely be back on tomorrow to film more of this, so I invite you to join me then. In the meantime, have a good evening. Hope you enjoy the holidays, and thank you for watching.